The rain poured heavily outside, drumming against the tin roof of a small, dimly lit tailor shop. Inside, amidst the faint hum of an old sewing machine, Arif sat hunched over his worktable, his rough hands carefully stitching fabric together. The shop was small, barely big enough to fit more than 2 people at a time, and the wooden shelves were stacked with neatly folded clothes waiting for repairs. This was his world, a life of endless stitching, long hours, and barely enough earnings to keep the lights on. But Arif never complained. He loved his craft, even if the world never truly saw his worth. Just as he was about to take a sip of his lukewarm tea, the shop door burst open, letting in a gust of cold wind and a figure dressed in an expensive black suit. The man was tall, his presence commanding, and his neatly styled hair dripped slightly from the rain. Arif immediately recognized him. Everyone in the city knew who he was. It was Mr. Salman, the CEO of a major fashion company, a man known for his perfectionism and sharp business acumen. His mere presence in such a humble place was enough to leave Arif stunned. Salman stepped forward, his sharp eyes scanning the small shop with mild disapproval before he pulled off his jacket and laid it on the counter. "Can you fix this?" he asked, his tone clipped and impatient. Arif hesitated for a moment before picking up the jacket. The stitching had come undone near the sleeve, a small tear that looked out of place on such an expensive suit. "Yes, sir. It will take some time, but I can repair it," he said, nodding respectfully. "I need it in an hour," Salman said, checking his watch. His tone left no room for negotiation. Arif's heart sank. An hour was hardly enough for a proper fix, but he knew better than to refuse a powerful man like Salman. "I'll do my best," he replied, quickly pulling out his tools. As he worked, Salman paced the shop, clearly uncomfortable in such a modest setting. "Do you always work alone?" he asked after a while, perhaps out of curiosity. Arif smiled slightly, his hands never stopping. "Yes, sir. My father was a tailor too. He taught me everything before he passed away. This shop is all I have left of him." Salman didn't respond immediately. He simply watched as Arif's fingers skillfully brought the fabric back together, stitching it with care and precision. Minutes passed, and Arif, despite the pressure, finished the repair just in time. He carefully pressed the suit and handed it back. "It's done, sir." Salman inspected the stitching, his sharp gaze analyzing every detail. For a brief second, something flickered in his expression. Was it surprise? He said nothing, simply nodded, pulled out his wallet, and placed a few bills on the counter. Then, without another word, he walked out into the night. Arif exhaled, feeling a strange weight settle over him. He had done his job, but something about the way Salman looked at the suit, at him, felt different. Little did he know that small moment, that simple act of fixing a tear, was about to change his life in ways he could never have imagined. The night felt longer than usual for Arif. Even after closing his small shop, he couldn't stop thinking about the CEO's unexpected visit. It wasn't every day that someone as powerful as Salman stepped into a rundown tailor shop like his. And it wasn't just the visit that troubled him. It was the way Salman had looked at the suit after the repair, as if seeing something he hadn't expected. Arif had spent his entire life stitching and repairing clothes, but never had a customer left him with such a strange feeling. As he locked up and made his way home through the narrow streets, his thoughts wandered to his late father. He had been a skilled tailor, known for his precision and craftsmanship. When Arif was a boy, he would sit beside him, watching his hands move like magic, weaving stories through fabric. "A good tailor doesn't just stitch clothes," his father would say. "He stitches trust, dignity, and sometimes even fate itself." Arif never truly understood those words until now. The next morning, he arrived at his shop early, as usual. He set up his sewing machine, dusted the shelves, and placed the open sign on the door. It was just another day, or so he thought. But not long after, something happened that made his heart pound. A black luxury car pulled up in front of his shop. The sleek vehicle looked completely out of place in the worn-down neighborhood. Arif watched, frozen, as the door opened and Salman stepped out. He wasn't alone this time. Another man followed, tall, well-dressed, with an air of authority. Arif quickly wiped his hands on his apron, trying to steady himself. What was a CEO doing back here? Had he found a mistake in the stitching? Was he unhappy with the repair? The bell above the door chimed as they entered. Salman's sharp eyes scanned the shop once again before he finally spoke. "Did you really stitch that suit by hand?" Arif blinked, confused by the question. "Yes, sir. I don't use machines for delicate repairs like that. It's all handwork." The other man, who Arif now assumed was one of Salman's business associates, stepped forward. "Mr. Salman told me about your work. He said he's never seen stitching like that before. Not in any designer brand, not even in his own company." Arif felt his throat go dry. He wasn't sure how to respond. He had spent years perfecting his craft, but no one had ever spoken about his work like this. He was just a small tailor, fixing ripped clothes and broken zippers to make ends meet. Salman studied him for a moment before finally saying, "I want you to do something for me. A test, if you will." "A test?" Arif asked, his voice unsure. Salman gestured to the man beside him, who pulled out a neatly folded piece of fabric from a sleek black bag. He placed it on the counter, unfolding it carefully. The fabric was unlike anything Arif had ever seen. Smooth, rich, and luxurious. It was the kind of material only the wealthiest people could afford. "I want you to make a suit from this," Salman said. "No machines. Only your hands." Arif's fingers grazed the fabric. It was delicate yet firm, the kind of material that demanded perfection. His heart raced. This wasn't just any job. This was a challenge, an opportunity unlike anything he had ever imagined. But why him? I don't understand, sir," Arif admitted hesitantly. "I'm just a simple tailor. You have the best designers and craftsmen working for you. Why me?" Salman's lips pressed into a thin line. "Because I need to know if what I saw yesterday was real. If it was just luck, or if you truly have something that others don't." Arif felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear, excitement, uncertainty. This was more than just stitching a suit. This was a test by one of the most powerful men in the industry. And something about Salman's tone told him that failure wasn't an option. "How much time do I have?" Arif asked finally. His voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. "1 week," Salman replied. "If you succeed, we'll talk about what comes next." Without another word, Salman turned and left, his associate following closely behind. The bell jingled softly as the door shut behind them, leaving Arif standing there, staring at the fabric, his mind spinning with questions. Why had Salman chosen him? What exactly was he looking for? And most importantly, what would happen if he failed? As the day passed, Arif found himself running his fingers over the fabric repeatedly. He had never worked with something so fine before. Every stitch would have to be perfect, every seam flawless. But the real weight on his shoulders wasn't just about making a suit. It was about proving himself to a man who could change his life forever. By nightfall he finally began. He carefully took the measurements, visualizing the design in his mind. He didn't have fancy tools or assistants. It was just him, his thread, and his years of experience. He worked in silence, each stitch carrying a silent prayer. He couldn't afford to make a mistake. The next few days passed in a blur. Arif barely ate, barely slept. His hands ached, his eyes burned, but he kept going. The more he worked, the more he realized this was more than just sewing. This was his chance to be seen, to be recognized for what he had spent his entire life mastering. On the 6th night, just as he was putting the final touches on the suit, something unexpected happened. The shop door creaked open. Arif looked up, surprised. It was late. Who could it be? A shadowy figure stood at the entrance, half hidden in the dim light. Arif's heart pounded. "Who's there?" he called out. The figure stepped forward, and when the light hit his face, Arif felt a shiver run down his spine. It wasn't Salman. It wasn't a customer. It was someone from his past. Someone he never thought he'd see again. And in that moment, Arif realized, this wasn't just about a suit anymore. This was about something much bigger. Arif's breath caught in his throat as he recognized the man standing at the door. His worn-out features, the sharp eyes that once held kindness but now carried something else, something heavier. It was Sajid, an old friend, once a fellow apprentice under Arif's father. But they hadn't spoken in years, not since the day Sajid had left suddenly, chasing bigger dreams in a world Arif had never stepped into. Sajid. Arif's voice wavered slightly, unsure if he was seeing a ghost or if this was real. Sajid stepped fully into the shop, his eyes scanning the unfinished suit on the table. He gave a slow nod, his lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You still have the same hands," he said, voice quiet. "Steady, precise." Arif swallowed, glancing between Sajid and the suit. Something about his sudden arrival, his tone, sent an uneasy feeling crawling up Arif's spine. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Sajid sighed, walking deeper into the shop, his fingers grazing the shelves, the spools of thread, as if reliving an old memory. "I heard about you," he said. "About your work. And then I heard about the CEO." He finally turned, meeting Arif's gaze. "I had to see it for myself." Arif felt a strange tightness in his chest. He and Sajid had started in the same place, learning the same craft. But while Arif had stayed back, working tirelessly in the small shop, Sajid had left, seeking fortune in the bigger cities. He had always dreamed of working for high-end brands, of making a name for himself. Arif had thought he had succeeded. "I don't understand," Arif admitted. "You left to do what I never could. Why are you back?" Sajid chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. "Because sometimes the world doesn't care how skilled you are. It only cares who you are." He gestured to the suit. "And right now you're no one. But somehow you caught the eye of Salman." Arif frowned, unsure where this was going. "He gave me a chance," he said carefully. "He wants to see what I can do." "And then what?" Sajid's voice turned sharper. "You think he'll just welcome you into his world? That a poor tailor from the backstreets will suddenly stand next to designers who trained in Italy and Paris?" The words stung, but Arif straightened his back. "If my work is good enough, why not?" Sajid exhaled, shaking his head. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about the stitching. There's more at play here. People don't rise from nowhere without stepping on someone else's toes." Arif stared at him, trying to make sense of the warning hidden in his words. "What are you trying to say?" Sajid hesitated before finally leaning in slightly, his voice dropping. "Salman's company isn't just a fashion empire. It's a battlefield. If you impress him, you won't just be making suits. You'll be walking into a world where every thread you stitch could be the reason someone else loses their place." Arif's stomach twisted. He had only been focused on the opportunity, on proving himself. He hadn't thought about what it might mean for others in the industry. But before he could process it, Sajid's expression darkened. "And there are people, powerful people, who don't want an unknown tailor to suddenly be recognized." Chill ran through Arif. "Are you saying someone wants me to fail?" Sajid didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. He placed it on the table next to the suit. "I have to go," he said. "But before you trust anyone, read this." And with that, he turned and walked out, leaving behind nothing but a sense of unease. Arif hesitated before picking up the paper, unfolding it carefully. His brows furrowed as he read the words written inside. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was an address. Somewhere deep in the city. Somewhere he had never been before. The next morning, Arif struggled to focus. His hands moved mechanically over the suit, finishing the final stitches, pressing the fabric into perfect lines. But his mind was elsewhere. On Sajid's words, on the address, on the nagging feeling that this was bigger than just a test. By evening he made his decision. He locked up his shop, tucked the address into his pocket, and took a bus into the heart of the city. The buildings here were taller, the streets busier, the people moving with a purpose he didn't recognize. It was a world so different from his own. When he finally arrived at the location, he found himself standing in front of a grand showroom. It was a high-end boutique, the kind that displayed designer suits behind glass windows, where the price of a single jacket could buy an entire month's worth of food for him. He hesitated before stepping inside. The moment he did, a woman in a sleek black dress approached him. She looked him up and down, her polite smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Can I help you?" Arif swallowed. I was given this address." He hesitated before showing her the note. The woman's expression barely changed, but she gestured for him to follow. He did, walking past rows of expensive clothing, the scent of luxury filling the air. Finally, she stopped in front of a glass-walled office. Inside sat a man, older, refined, with silver hair and an expression that spoke of authority. He looked up as the woman knocked lightly on the door. The moment his gaze landed on Arif, something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. "Ah," the man said, leaning back in his chair. "So, you're the tailor." Arif's hands clenched at his sides. He had no idea who this man was. But from the way he spoke, the way he looked at him, he knew exactly who Arif was. And that scared him more than anything. Arif felt a strange heaviness in the air as the older man studied him. He had never met this man before, yet there was something unsettling in the way he spoke, as if he had been expecting him. The office was sleek and modern, lined with glass walls that overlooked the boutique floor below. The man sat behind a large wooden desk, his hands clasped together, his sharp gaze never leaving Arif. "You must be wondering why you're here," the man said finally, his voice smooth yet carrying an underlying weight. Arif swallowed, his throat dry. "I was given this address," he said carefully, holding up the note. "I don't even know who you are." The man leaned back in his chair, nodding slightly, as if this answer amused him. "My name is Kamal," he said. "And I know exactly who you are, Arif." A cold chill ran down Arif's spine. How did this man know his name? Why did it sound like he had been keeping track of him? Kamal gestured towards the glass wall, his eyes flickering toward the boutique floor below, where expensive suits hung on display. "I've been in this industry for decades," he continued. "I've seen tailors rise and I've seen them fall. Some think skill is all it takes to make it in this world. But that's not how it works." Arif frowned. "Then how does it work?" he asked cautiously. Kamal gave a slow, knowing smile. "It works with the right connections, the right alliances," he said. "You've caught the attention of Salman, and that means you've stepped into a game you don't understand." Arif's heart pounded. He thought this was just about proving his skill, about making a suit worthy of a CEO's approval. But now, with every word Kamal spoke, he felt as if he had walked into something far more dangerous. Kamal tapped his fingers on the desk before speaking again. "Do you know why Salman is testing you?" he asked. Arif hesitated, then shook his head. Kamal smirked. "Because he wants to replace someone. And that someone isn't going to step aside quietly." The words hit Arif like a punch to the gut. He had never thought about what this opportunity might mean for others, who might lose because he was given a chance. He wasn't trying to take anyone's place. He was just trying to prove himself. Kamal's voice dropped slightly, his tone turning serious. "You have talent, Arif. More than most. But talent alone won't protect you from what's coming." A knot formed in Arif's stomach. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kamal didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood up, walked around the desk, and stopped directly in front of Arif. He was taller than he looked from behind the desk, his presence commanding. "There are people in this business who don't like surprises," he said. They don't like it when someone new enters their world without permission. Arif's breath hitched. Was this a warning? A threat? Kamal sighed as if he could see the panic rising in Arif. I'm offering you a way out, he said. You walk away from Salman's test, and this whole thing disappears. You go back to your little shop. No problems. No risks. Arif felt his heartbeat in his ears. Was this really happening? A day ago he had been stitching fabric in a small shop, and now he was standing in front of a man who seemed to be telling him that his future wasn't just about sewing a suit, it was about survival. He clenched his fists, his father's words echoing in his mind. A tailor stitches trust, dignity, and sometimes even fate itself. Arif took a deep breath, his decision already made. He looked Kamal in the eyes. I'm not walking away, he said firmly. I'll finish what I started. Kamal studied him for a long moment before shaking his head with a small chuckle. I figured you'd say that, he murmured. Then his face hardened. But understand this, Arif. If you keep going, you won't just be competing with other tailors. You'll be making enemies. And some enemies don't play fair. The weight of those words settled over Arif as Kamal stepped aside, motioning towards the door. I suggest you be very careful, he added. Because the moment you put that final stitch in Salman's suit, you'll no longer be just a tailor. Arif turned, walking out of the office, his mind spinning with thoughts he couldn't shake. He had stepped into something much bigger than he had ever imagined. And now there was no turning back. As he walked out of the boutique and into the city night, he felt the weight of the suit waiting for him back in his shop. It wasn't just fabric and thread anymore. It was his future. And someone out there was waiting to tear it apart before he could even finish. Arif walked through the dimly lit streets, his mind clouded with thoughts. The weight of Kamal's warning clung to him like a shadow, but he couldn't afford to let fear shake him. He had come too far. He had stitched every inch of Salman's suit with his own hands, poured his skill, his dedication, his very soul into it. He wasn't going to stop now. As he neared his shop, the streetlights flickered, casting long shadows against the shuttered buildings. Something felt off. The usual quiet hum of the night felt too silent, too unnatural. He slowed his steps, glancing around. That's when he noticed it. His shop door was slightly open. His breath caught. He was sure he had locked it before leaving. His heart pounded as he reached for the handle, pushing the door open cautiously. The dim light from the street barely illuminated the inside, but as his eyes adjusted, he felt his stomach drop. The shop had been ransacked. Rolls of fabric lay scattered across the floor, shelves were emptied, drawers pulled open and overturned. His sewing machine was untouched, but the one thing that mattered most was missing, the suit. Arif rushed to his work table, his hands trembling as he searched through the mess. The suit, the one he had worked tirelessly on, the one that was supposed to change his life, was gone. A cold dread settled over him. This wasn't just a random burglary. Someone had done this deliberately. Someone didn't want him to finish the job. His mind raced back to Kamal's warning. You'll be making enemies. And some enemies don't play fair. A sharp knock at the door made him spin around. His pulse jumped. Had the thieves returned? Was this some kind of threat? But then a voice called out, familiar, urgent. Arif, open up. It's me. Sajid. Arif hurried to the door and pulled it open. Sajid stepped inside quickly, glancing over his shoulder before shutting the door behind him. The look on his face confirmed what Arif already knew. This wasn't a coincidence. They took it, didn't they? Sajid asked, his voice tense. Arif swallowed hard. Who? Sajid let out a frustrated breath, running a hand through his hair. I told you this wasn't just about the suit. Someone wants you out of this before you even get a chance to prove yourself. Arif shook his head, trying to process. But why? Who would go this far just to stop me from stitching a suit? Sajid hesitated before speaking, his voice lower now. Because it's not just about stitching. Salman isn't just looking for a tailor. He's looking for someone to take over a crucial part of his business. The one who makes his personal suits holds power. The one who designs for him controls influence. And there are people who don't want that power to shift. Arif stared at him. He had thought this was a simple test, a chance to showcase his skill. But now it was turning into something far more dangerous. Sajid reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded note. "I found out who took the suit," he said. "And where they took it." Arif's fingers clenched around the paper as he opened it. It was another address. But this time it wasn't a boutique or an office. It was a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. A surge of determination filled him. Whoever had stolen his work thought they could silence him, erase his chance before he even got to the finish line. They were wrong. Arif looked up at Sajid, his jaw set. "I'm getting it back." Sajid hesitated. "Arif, this isn't just about retrieving a suit. If you go there, you're walking straight into their territory." Arif's grip tightened around the note. "Then I'll walk in," he said, his voice steady. "And I'll make sure they regret ever trying to stop me." The night stretched out before them, dark and uncertain. But Arif knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not yet. Arif stood outside the warehouse, his heart pounding in his chest. The dim glow of a single bulb flickered above the entrance, casting long shadows against the metal door. He tightened his fists, glancing at Sajid, who looked just as tense. "This could be a trap," Sajid whispered. Arif nodded. "I know." But there was no turning back now. Whoever had taken the suit wanted to end his chances before he could even prove himself. He wasn't going to let that happen. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the heavy door open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of old fabric. Stacks of wooden crates lined the walls, and in the center of the room stood a man Arif recognized immediately. Kamal. Arif's stomach twisted. "You!" Kamal smirked, his hands tucked into his pockets. "I warned you, didn't I? Some people don't like surprises." Behind him, a table was set up, and there it was, Salman's suit, draped over a mannequin as if it were being examined. Arif took a step forward. "Why steal it? If you thought I wasn't worthy, you could have let me fail on my own." Kamal let out a small laugh. "You don't get it, do you? This was never about skill. It was about control. If Salman trusts you, if you become his personal tailor, you become more than just a man who stitches suits. You become someone with influence. And I can't have that." Arif clenched his fists. "So you're scared?" Kamal's smirk faltered for just a moment. "I don't need to be scared," Kamal said, stepping closer. "Because you won't be delivering this suit. You'll walk away, forget about all of this, and go back to your tiny shop where you belong." Arif felt a surge of anger rise in him, but he kept his voice steady. "No." Kamal sighed as if disappointed. "I was hoping you'd see reason." He snapped his fingers and from the shadows, two men stepped forward. Bigger, stronger, and clearly not here to negotiate. Sajid tensed beside Arif, ready to step in, but before anyone could move, a new voice rang through the warehouse. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway, his presence commanding the entire room, was Salman. The room fell into silence. Kamal stiffened. "Mr. Salman." Salman lifted a hand, silencing him. His eyes swept over the scene, the stolen suit, the tense expressions, the way Arif stood his ground despite the odds. A slow, knowing smile formed on his face. "I had a feeling something like this might happen," Salman said, stepping forward. "Which is why I made sure to follow the right trail." He looked at Arif, then at Kamal. "I expected better from you, Kamal." Kamal swallowed, his confidence cracking. "Sir, you were only making sure no one challenged your place," Salman finished for him. "But you made a mistake. You thought this was just about a suit." He turned to Arif. "But I was never just testing your tailoring skills." Arif's breath caught. Salman gestured toward the suit. "A man who can stitch a perfect suit is valuable. but a man who refuses to give up, who stands his ground even when the odds are against him. That is the kind of man I trust. He turned back to Kamal, his expression hardening. And the kind of man I will replace you with. Kamal's face paled. Sir, you can't. I just did. Arif stood frozen, barely believing what he was hearing. Salman looked at him. Take the suit and bring it to my office. I'll see you there. And with that, Salman turned and walked out, leaving Kamal standing there defeated. Arif stepped forward, lifting the suit from the mannequin. It felt heavier than before, not just in weight but in meaning. He had started this journey as a simple tailor, but now, he was walking out as something much more. As he and Sajid stepped out of the warehouse, the night air felt different. The battle was over. But as Arif looked ahead, he knew, this was only the beginning. Arif walked through the city streets, the suit carefully draped over his arm. The weight of it felt different now. Not just fabric and thread, but a symbol of everything he had fought for. Sajid walked beside him, silent for a while before finally speaking. You really did it, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. You just took down Kamal without even realizing it. Arif exhaled slowly, his mind still trying to process everything. I didn't want to take anyone down, he murmured. I just wanted to prove myself. And you did, Sajid said. But you also exposed something bigger. Salman didn't just see your skill. He saw your determination. That's what made the difference. Arif didn't reply. The city lights reflected in his tired eyes as they neared Salman's office. Just hours ago, everything had felt uncertain, like the world was against him. But now, he was stepping into a future he hadn't even dared to dream of. When they arrived at the office, the receptionist was already expecting them. Without a word, she led them inside. Salman was waiting, standing near the window, his hands behind his back. Arif placed the suit on the table with careful hands. Salman turned, studying him for a long moment before speaking. Did you ever think you'd be standing here? He asked. Arif hesitated, then shook his head. No. I thought I was just making a suit. Salman smiled slightly. You were. But sometimes, the way a man handles a single task tells you everything you need to know about him. He gestured toward the suit. You could have given up. You could have walked away. Instead, you fought for something most would have let go. Arif swallowed, feeling the weight of those words. He had never thought of himself as someone important. He was just a tailor, a man with a small shop trying to survive. But tonight had changed that. Salman stepped closer, his expression thoughtful. Kamal was right about one thing. The man who makes my suits holds influence. He is someone I trust, someone who represents me in ways others don't understand. He paused. I need a new tailor. Someone who is not only skilled, but resilient. Someone who refuses to be broken. Arif felt his breath catch. Was this really happening? I want you to work for me, Salman continued. Not just for one suit, but for all of them. Every important meeting, every occasion. I want you to be the one who stitches my presence into every fabric. Arif's hands trembled slightly. 1,000 thoughts rushed through his mind. He had spent years in his tiny shop, working tirelessly, hoping for a chance like this. And now, it was being handed to him. He looked up at Salman, his voice steady despite the emotions running through him. I accept. Salman nodded, as if he had already known the answer. Good. Sajid let out a quiet breath beside him, grinning. I guess this means you're no longer just a tailor, huh? Arif chuckled softly, shaking his head. I think I'll always be a tailor, he said. But maybe now I'm something more too. As they left the office, the night air felt different. The uncertainty that had once followed him was gone. He had stepped into a world he had never imagined, but one where he had proven he belonged. Back at his small shop, Arif stood at the doorway for a long moment, looking at the place where everything had begun. It wasn't grand, it wasn't perfect, but it was his. His journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. And for the first time, he wasn't afraid of what came next.